Hello and welcome to AdWords Bootcamp session number 3. And I am Brian Todd, and we've got Mike Rhodes with me. And so today's session is about writing ads. And you got a really, really good taste of the art of ad writing when you heard Mike and Perry, well, Perry specifically, do the session on Swiss Army knife. And in the members area, you have access to Perry's little digital session on how to do how to use the Swiss Army knife to write better ads. But that's more of the art of it. And Mike here today is going to delve much more into the science of it. Now, Mike, I know that some of what you're going to talk about is definitely going to be art in a sense, but I think what you have today is really going to round out all the fundamentals that a person needs to know and understand in order to do ads in Google. Because a reality, I don't try to dwell on this, but it is important to know, a reality is Swiss Army knife applied to the hilt is not going to always work in all situations for every possible ad you could ever attempt to put up on Google. And I think you will give some guidelines that help people to see and understand what kind of things need to be in place in most ads, so that you can better make a decision like, is this a job for a Swiss Army knife with this ad I'm writing, or do I need to apply some other different kind of acumen in order to make this work? So, Mike, take it away. Great to have you.
Good intro. Thank you, sir. Yes, a little overview of what we're going to talk about, just so you know the rough lay of the land for the next hour and a half. A little bit of sort of high-level big picture, as always, at the beginning. I'm going to touch on persuasion, because that is ultimately what we are trying to do with our ads. We're trying to persuade people to click. We'll talk very briefly about the specs. I think all of us are probably very aware of the specifications, the real nuts and bolts of what needs to be an ad. We won't dwell on that. We'll just cover that for the sake of completeness. Touch on policy and competitor research, and then quite a bit on then testing and particularly triggers. I'll go into that in a bit more detail, but some Joe Sugarman stuff. Now, I've already shared also in the members area, because I'm actually organized for a change, all of the mind maps from this week. So there's 3 mind maps and a copy of the slides. They're all in the members area, which you get to via that URL. Oh, and then we'll talk about extensions towards the end of the call, and I'll dig into a fair bit more detail, diving into your AdWords account and some of the more useful extensions, where to go and how to set those up. There's the mind map for today. Again, you've got the PDF of that. It's vector-based, so you can zoom in and so on, and download that in the members area. Let's go through it. So we'll start big picture, as always, and it's just a really good reminder that of all of the stuff that we're going to do over the course of this 8 weeks, that the ad is the only visible part of your account. When somebody goes looking, they don't care about your bid modifiers and your things and the this and that and all the other bits and pieces that you've done. The ad is the only bit they get to see. So it's important for your prospect, but if you're doing this as an agency, you'll also find that you get a lot of questions about this from the hippos. The hippo, again, is the highest paid person's opinion. That's pretty much going to be the CEO of the company that you're running this for. You will always get those questions of, why are we running that ad still? Or this is wrong and there's a letter wrong there. So it's the visible bit. So this is the bit that you will get a lot of back and forth around. Again, we talked about Robert Collier last week. Empathy around keyword research. Same applies. The job here to be done by us is to climb inside our prospect's head and figure out what is that conversation already going on for them. To write the best ad, we need to understand where they're at. And the golden rule for all of this is to be relevant. We want the most relevant ad possible, which is why we talked extensively last week about breaking your keywords into small, closely related themes because we're going to put those groups of keywords into different ad groups. The reason we have ad groups is to write the most relevant ad for that group of people. If we have one huge ad group with 500 keywords in it, we can't write a very relevant ad to all of those different people looking for all of those different things. We're focusing on them. That means we're going to use their language. We're not going to use industry jargon. We're going to talk in their language using their words and talk about them. Therefore, we're going to talk about benefits. So this is pretty standard marketing 101 stuff, I know, but it's always a good reminder. So many ads I still see are all features and all, we've been in business since 1853, or it's all talking about the business being advertised. It's all the advertiser. It should be all about them. And the best benefit that you can come up with is a point of difference benefit, i.e. why you. So we talked about the unique methodology, the USP, unique selling proposition, last week. Brian has a whole section on that that's fantastic stuff.
I was going to say,
Why
I could
you?
recommend a great course on that.
Which is fabulous. I actually took that course. I went through that as a participant with you, and that was fabulous for my business. But understand that when somebody lands on that page of Google results, they are not reading all 10 of those organic listings and all 11 of those ads in detail and weighing these things up. Do I click on this one or that? They're scanning it, they're making an instant decision, and their brain is looking for the deal. Their brain is looking for the bargain. And so point of difference really helps you stand out. We'll talk about some different things to test as we go through. The key to making AdWords as profitable as it can be is testing. You've heard it time and time again, but it is worth reminding. Ad copy is about testing different ideas. So we have to just mention this book before we go further. If you have not read Influence by Cialdini, I would highly, highly recommend that as soon as we're finished with this call, you jump onto Amazon and spend the whatever it is, $13 or something, to buy a copy of that book. He talks in there, this is the net of the whole thing, these 6 points listed on the left. This is how you persuade. So have this in the back of your mind. I'm not going to talk specifically about all of these, but have this in your mind as you go through for your ads, for your site, for all of your marketing. This he found, and it has been, as you see, they're revised, and this is just gold. Every marketer needs to read this book. There's so much useful stuff in there. I just wanted to call that out. I'm not going to spend 15 minutes talking about it because hopefully most of us have read it. All right. Specifications, the specs for the ad. Again, hopefully this is very foundational. Hopefully you already know this. You got a headline, that's 25 characters. Generally speaking, and we're going to talk about Swiss Army knife and how to do things a bit differently, but generally speaking, you probably want to include the keywords, and that's pretty easy to do. If you've got a small ad group, which has only got a small number of keywords in, it's pretty easy to include the keywords from that group in the headline. The reason being is that's the first thing that you need. You need to just at least draw attention to your ad. So for them to see the words that they've just used is one of the easiest ways to make your ad noticeable to them. It's not a set in stone always do this, but certainly when you're starting out, you probably want to include your main keywords in the headline of the ad. Can't use an exclamation point in a headline, and we talked last week about DKI, dynamic keyword insertion. It might not have been last week, might have been the promo, sorry. Used to be that the words that the punter typed into Google, the search query, those words would be bolded everywhere in your ad. It is no longer the case. They don't get bolded in the headline as of about, I think it was about mid-November last year. Those keywords no longer get bolded in the headline, and that was one of the big benefits of using DKI, which dynamically inserts the keyword that their search query got matched to as the headline of the ad. Far better these days to craft a good quality headline rather than rely on DKI, partly because that bolding doesn't happen. You then have the two description lines. Description 1, which I'll usually abbreviate as we go through these 8 weeks, as D1 and D2. So that's what I'm talking about. If I talk about D1, you've got 35 characters. You're typically going to put, again, that big benefit, that point of difference benefit in there. And you want to end D1 with punctuation, but you don't want that to be an exclamation point. The reason being, Google is going to, and I'll show you some examples of this a little later, Google is going to what we call wrap that D1 onto the end of your headline and effectively show an extended headline. If your ad is in those top 3 positions, note to self, I should have had a screenshot of this, but I have got examples later on. I'll point it out when we get to them. When your ad is in those top 3 positions, Google will show an extended headline, which is your headline and then D1, as long as you have punctuation, i.e. a full stop or a question mark, on the end of D1. Don't use an exclamation point because Google doesn't like exclamation points in headlines. D2, again, 35 characters. Generally speaking, you're going to put your call to action here. It's, again, not a golden rule, but a good guideline to follow when you're starting out, and or additional benefits. It can't lead into the display URL, which is the 4th line of the ad that I'm about to talk about, i.e. you can't say something like, see this site, or learn more at, which then is leading into the display URL. Google treat that as a waste of space. It should be unnecessary. It is unnecessary to say that. You can't say that. Similarly, you can't say click here in an ad. I'll talk about policy in a second, but that is a phrase that Google do not want to see in your ads. Now, you can get away with them in image ads on the display network, but you can't have them in your text ads. And call to action, obviously, there's a vast range of things there. There is actually a Swiss Army blade all around calls to action and offers, but things like buy, download, sign up, call today, etc. Now, your display URL, 35 characters allowed there. And I should say for most of this, when I'm talking character count, I'm assuming that you're writing in English. If you're writing in kanji or in Japanese, then slightly different rules apply, but most countries, these rules apply. With that display URL, you can add extra text. Assuming your top level domain, your main domain name, is short enough, you can stick a / on the end of that and then add some extra word or words there. For instance, repeating the call to offer, repeating the call to action, repeating the offer, or just adding those keywords again after that / again. More examples coming in a bit. But that's just extra space that you have in your ad that often gets ignored and often therefore gets wasted. The main part of the domain, example.com, Google is always going to display, in search at least, in all lowercase. But the bit that comes after the / you can use capitals there. So it's always good to capitalize each word that you use in the second half of your display URL, because that will make it stand out a little bit more. You have to use the same domain. So perrymarshall.com, let's say, that has to be the same root domain in all of the ads in that particular ad group. So there's a discussion, I think Joe has started the discussion on the Google Plus forum about testing different domains. I've shared a couple of ideas there. Go have a read of that if you want. I've also just pasted yesterday a script that will allow you to do some very funky testing around this. It used to be pretty easy if you wanted to test domain names. You could chuck 2 or 3 ads, each with a different domain name, into the ad group. That option hasn't been around for many years. But scripts is a new funky way that you can do that if you really want to. But as I've said in my response to Joe, it's not an 80-20 activity. It is not one of those things that's high up the list of things to do. When you've maxed out everything else, then you can worry about going testing domain names and potentially changing the domain name for your whole business. It's not where you want to start. And generally speaking, matching the country is going to be a good thing. I.e., if you're showing ads in Australia, you're going to get a better response from a .com.au. If you're showing ads in the UK, you're going to get a better response from using a .co.uk rather than a .com. It's not always the case, but generally speaking, we here in Australia are going to respond better to that because, again, it comes back to our golden rule of be relevant. If it's a .com.au, it's going to look more relevant to me than if I see say a .biz or a .co.uk, which I'm then assuming is not as good for me being based here. So if you can, match the country.
Is it still true, Mike, that in any given ad group, all of the display URLs or all the destination domains need to be the same?
Yes, yeah, all the same root domain. So the bit that comes after the root domain, the top level domain, the perrymarshall.com bit, that's the bit that has to be the same in every ad. But what comes after that, you can use different pages within that site. You can use different display URLs, definitely, but it all has to be the same root domain in that ad group. And destination URL, you've got a lot more room to play with here. It has to be the same root domain as the display URL, so you can't sort of trick them by putting bestwebsiteever.com in the display URL and then sending them off to crappywebsite.com, which is your actual destination URL. And those two have to be the same, and it should go without saying you want to make sure you send that traffic to a real page that's live, and yet still every day we see ads pointing to 404s. I think we were guilty of that recently with one of our Facebook ads, but let's not go there. All right, policy. And do yourself a favor, you're doing this seriously, you're spending a bit of money on AdWords, go have a read of this page on the AdWords Help Center, short code there. That's where the big list of all of the policies are listed. I'm going to highlight two here, which are the editorial policy, and I'll just mention trademark in a second. I would go and have a look at the page and read through all of these, but that's just me. Certainly if you're doing this for clients, you really need to understand this, and it is just not worth banging your head against the wall. It's not worth trying to call your rep and saying, look, I know you've got this policy that says this, but, well, we're a bit special because XYZ. It's just not worth it. They're not going to listen. I mean, if you're spending maybe 10 million and up a year, they might listen, but probably not even then, to be honest. They don't care. So follow the rules. Generally speaking, you don't want to use, or you won't be able to use, superlatives in your ad, i.e. best XYZ or number one XYZ. Now, if you have proof that backs up that claim within a click or two of the landing page, then you can say that. If you can show, a magazine article and that's shown on the page where they called you the best accounting software in the world or whatever it was, then you can say that. But you can't just chuck those in if you don't have any proof to back that up. Spelling and grammar is important to Google, so don't use something that looks like your kid's text message in an ad with abbreviations and short codes and so on. Google isn't going to allow that. Make sure everything's spelt right. Part of that is making sure that you use proper punctuation where possible. You don't have to, but it generally will get you a better result and get you into less trouble with policy. One thing you can't do is use all capitals unless it's a well-known acronym. I'm trying to think of it. So you can't have free in all capitals. We can get away with our Hummer client of putting Hummer in all capitals because that's how they write it in their trademark. Style, I've mentioned already.
Capitals in a display URL, like if you have a multiple word URL like melbourneshops.com or something like that.
So that will all be displayed these days, all lowercase. So it used to be the case that you would capitalize the M in Melbourne and the S in shops. I still tend to do that just because it's easier when you're doing your checks. It's easier to see that you've got the right domain everywhere. But also a lot of display text ads, which we'll talk about a lot more in week 7, will still display those capital letters. And because people are often lazy and may even have, although they won't have by the end of this course, but may have search and display mixed in the same campaign, I just find it's just good practice to still do that. Google will still let you use capitals, individual capital letters in that, but it will display the root domain all lowercase. What you can't have are entire words, say in the headline or D1, D2, where they are all capitalized. It just looks spammy. Which goes to the style section. you again, like we talked about before, you can't use junky looking things. You can't use $3 signs instead of the word money, for instance. Google won't allow that. And one of those things is you can't use the phrase click here, and you can no longer have a phone number in the ad. So you can use a call extension, which we'll talk about a little later on this call, about you can't actually write the phone number in the ad copy itself, unless you are, 1-800-Flowers. If that is the name of your business, then you can get away with it. But the vast majority of us, that doesn't apply. And trademark, because this is one that always causes a lot of hand-wringing and a lot of questions. Now, check your country, because it does differ a little bit region by region, which is why I've got the short code at the bottom of the screen there. But certainly is the case in Australia and the States and most other main countries where we advertise in, that you can now bid on any keyword you like, even if that is a trademark. I can bid on Nike, I can bid on Oprah Winfrey, I can bid on anything I like. What I can't do is use that trademark in my ad copy. But it used to be the case that if you owned a trademark term, you could write to Google and say, do not allow anybody else to bid on this term. It's trademarked by me. I don't want anybody else to be able to do that. You can't do that anymore. They actually have a line now that I noticed the other day in the policy, which says we will not investigate any trademark violation terms when it comes to keywords. They just point blank state that in the rules now, that we do not care. It does not matter. So therefore you can bid on anything. And we'll talk next week when we talk about campaigns and the different types of campaigns that we're going to use, about the pros and cons of bidding on your competitor terms, something that we will often do, although there's a sort of bit of a sneaky better way to do that now, which I'll talk about later. There's a tease. But you can bid on anything you like. You just cannot use what Google term as deceptive or misleading conduct and use those competitor names or those trademarks in the ad copy itself and sort of pretend to be something that you're not. But you can certainly go and bid on your competitor brand if you want to. We're going to talk about that next week, where we're going to build a competitor campaign so that all of those things are in one place and they're all separate. It is probably going to be one of the most profitable campaigns that you run. And we'll talk again about the pros and cons next week.
There have been tons of court cases, or at least a few landmark, quote-unquote, court cases about the use of trademarks. And one of the things they debate is what's the right analogy to describe what Google is doing when they let people bid on your trademark. So if I went to the pharmacy and I said, could I have a box of Anacin, please? And the pharmacist goes back to the shelf and he gives you a box of Anacin and also lays out Tylenol and Bufferin and a bunch of other things. You'd be like, well, that's a screwy pharmacy. I don't want to go there. But the judges in these court cases have decided, no, that's not what Google is doing. Instead, you're going to the store and you're looking for Anacin, and around Anacin are a bunch of different kind of pain relief products, and a store owner can choose to do that, and Google can choose to do that. So it's up to Google. So good for them. I'm just aware that
that box off the shelf, or you can choose to grab a different box that you didn't know that you were looking for.
That is absolutely true, and that's the analogy that works. And I think Oprah was one of the most precious of all of the names online. That, like, you couldn't bid on it, you couldn't mention it in your ads, anything. But thankfully, this has loosened up just a little bit. So
just a little, yeah. Bear in mind that basically the risk department run Google. If there is a risk of getting sued, they will basically come up with a rule that says you can't do that anymore. It is not so much policy, although that's part of it, but risk is a huge, huge part of the system.
Yep.
And just the end part of that is, if you are a reseller, and there is some additional stuff that you probably want to read in terms of the information provider around this, but if you're a reseller, let's say you sell Nike shoes, then you can use that Nike trademark in your ad because it is something that you resell. But again, read the policy for your specific case, because I can't cover every possible variation of that here. This big disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, don't play one on TV. read the rules and regulations, do your thing. All right, I want to talk a bit about competitor research. We talked to
Mike,
interject.
so the URL that you just provided just a second ago, that was specifically about trademarks.
Policy.
Okay. Was there a short link you had to main Google ad copy policies?
Yep,
That one. Here we go. Perfect. I'm going to copy that down and give me just a second. I'll copy that down and stick it into the text box.
Chat. Thank you. And as always, I will go through the presentation at the end, find all of these links, and stick them in the Google Plus community for everybody as well.
Thank you, Mike.
I think pretty much everyone is in there now. Cool. Competitors. So yeah, we talked last week about SpyFu, and I said that you absolutely do not need to go and buy a paid tool to do keyword research. If you're running ads for clients, then sooner or later you're probably going to want to. This that I'm going to show you here, this is from SpyFu. Now, again, you could use the ad preview tool inside AdWords to create something similar to this. I just like this tool because it gives me tons and tons of ads very, very easily. And I don't have all the fiddling around that I have with the ad preview tool. If you haven't seen the ad preview tool, go to Tools in your account, bottom of the list, ad preview tool, and you can see what ads are running in different locations. So it's fantastic for all of us outside the States to be able to see what sort of ads are running in the States. The reason I often look at the States, and I typically look at New York, Chicago, San Francisco, i.e. areas where there's likely to be lots of competition, because generally speaking, whoever's surviving in a highly competitive market is doing a lot right. So I will often go and look at those places to get ideas. And again, just like with keyword research, this is idea generation. We're not trying to rip off an ad in its entirety. We're just looking through these ads to find some ideas that we can then chuck into the mix for our brainstorming of things that we could put in our future ads. So, cosmetic surgery and VA, right in the middle of the screen there. Zero financing available and free consultation. There's another one, free consultation price estimate at the bottom. See our before and after photos. Now in this market, before and after photos are very, very popular, and you'll probably see a whole lot of before and after search queries if you're in this market showing up in your reports. So that's probably a really good thing to test in ads. And up the top right there, we've got 40,000 procedures performed. So we've got a nice big number, but it's not very specific. We're going to talk about specificity in a little bit. But I'm just glancing over this. I usually print these off and we sit there with a highlighter and go through, oh, there's a good line, there's a good line, there's a good line. And in our in-house ad writing tool, we'll take these ideas and pop them in our tool as template lines of things to be tested over the course of the coming weeks. So another one with cleaning. I just went through here and looked at some lines that jumped out at me. The in-home, free in-home estimates. Fully insured, that may be important to people in this market, as would be pre-screened, bonded, all of those type of terms, probably quite important to the person buying somebody to come into your home, whether you don't know them the first time. Book online. Yeah, if you have an online booking service, maybe that's important to people. Maybe people prefer to pick up the phone and book this in, but that might be something useful to test in that. And again, free in-home estimate again. So just using this as an idea generator. Now, if you want to get a little bit funkier with this, good friend of ours, Howie Jacobson, who wrote AdWords for Dummies, came up with this, the ad matrix. Now, there's a whole course that goes with this, but I'll give you the net of it. I hope Howie doesn't mind me reducing this down to a couple of minutes. I will give you, I haven't shared that yet, I don't think, so I'll make a note to put this in the members area as well, in the Google Plus area, so that if you really don't want to go create a blank 8-column table, you can just use my Word document and cheat and start there. What you're trying to do here is to pull different bits of ads out. So let me show you an example. It might make a bit more sense. Left-hand column, I'm just going through and listing my competitors. So this is an actual one that we created for a client, and I've used an old one from a few years ago, just so that nobody gets the knickers in a twist with me sharing any data that might be sensitive. I list the competitors. I then show for a particular keyword, which is the keyword at the top there, data center. I show what ad that person was showing. Now, true enough, I don't get to see all of their ad testing. I don't know exactly which keyword is going to match that particular search query. This is not a perfect system, but I'm just going to put down one of the ads, maybe a couple of the ads that I see when I do that search. I'm not going to sit there for a day and a half to make sure I know that they're split testing in a 80-20 ratio and write down all the ads that I find. Don't worry about it. Good enough is good enough. Grab one of the ads, stick it in there. And then what I'm trying to do with the next few columns there is just get a sense of what are they promising, what benefits do they mention, if any, what features do they mention, if any, what's the tone of voice of the ad. You know, I can say that just the facts, ma'am, just the facts with that first one. Sometimes it'll be, depending on the market you're in, that might be quite sarcastic, it might be funny. There are lots of different tones of voice that you can use. Doesn't really matter as long as you're consistent, as long as that tone of voice is followed through onto the landing page. That's another big thing that you can test. I think that's actually one of the things on Swiss Army Knife. And then what's the call to action? And you can see here that most of these, and this is an $80 a click term, most of these have no call to action. And then at the bottom, we've got the new ad, or one of the many new ads that we can then go back and suggest to the client. So if you do this for clients will love you if you present this to them, because they would actually rather get one over a competitor than do well themselves. They would love to go, oh, I bloody hate those guys. Let's do something better than them. The marketing briefs you'll see are ridiculous. It's all about, oh, I just want to be that guy. But this really helps you say, look, I have gone and looked at the market. These guys are saying some good things. Let's take this bit out of here, this bit out of here. Let's shuffle that all together. And here are half a dozen variations that we can come up with based on being better than the current market. Now, this is different to Swiss Army Knife. This is incremental benefits over what's already out there. Swiss Army Knife is coming at it from a completely different direction and coming up with something completely new, but good to test all of that. Very, very useful tool. Like I said, Awi's got a whole thing on it. It's called Checkmate, something or other, isn't it? AdWords Checkmate, I think, is the course. If you're really, really interested in this, it's a fabulous way of looking at the market. I'll show the blank template in the Google Plus area at the end of the call. So let's talk about testing. I've said that the key to the whole game here is to constantly be testing. You're constantly trying to beat the control. It's direct marketing 101. This has been around 100 years. If we had more time, I'd tell the story of E. Holden and Julius, but I'm guessing you may have already heard that story and the Little Blue Book. If not, go search for it. There's a fantastic Gary Halbert newsletter all about E. Holden and Julius and the Little Blue Book. It's pretty much where all of this started. Google is just a much, much, much faster and easier way to do testing that has been around 100 years. I mentioned this the other day on the call before we started the course. You don't want to test the little things. And again, Dave Bullock's line of first test forests, then test trees, then test branches, then test leaves. In other words, test the big stuff first. So when we're talking ads, the big thing is your headline. Test different headlines. Even if you have the same D1, D2 and display, and you're sending all of this traffic to the same page, test different headlines. Can't tell you how many times I would audit an account and there might be 8 different ads in a particular ad group and they all have exactly the same headline, and there's a little bit of difference between the different D2s. Well, there might be a big difference between the D2s, but all of the headlines are the same. And the range of difference in those click-through rates, therefore, is quite small. You want to test big differences, and that is something that Swiss Army Knife is very, very good at helping you do. You also want to test the call to action. Test what you're offering in the ad, because that is probably the second biggest thing. Yes, domain name is going to make a difference. I can hear Joe jumping up and down yelling at the screen from here. Domain name is going to make a difference, but most people are stuck with the name of their business. You're generally not going to go and change the name of your business. It is possible. Know that you can do it down the track, but it's not what you're going to do week 1. So You all have a copy, or if you've bought this in time, you do at least, have a copy of the Swiss Army bonus. Because I'm visual, I mind mapped the whole of Swiss Army Knife. So that mind map, the full version of this with all of these nodes blown up, is in the Google Plus community already. Go download that. You're welcome. I'm going to talk about 3 of the blades here because you've got Perry's training. You saw Perry do the 3 hot seats a couple of weeks ago, which was fantastic. I'm not going to beat this to death because you've been through this and you've got all of that. Do go through it. The ones I love the most in here, this one above all else, if I can only have one blade, the Swiss Army Knife Blade 1 is the one. I was one of those guys sitting there in Maui 2010 who said at 10 o'clock in the morning, yep, I'm done. I've got enough value from this to have paid for the entire thing. I'm not going to go to the beach. I'm going to sit in the room for the next 3 days, but I've got the value I need from this. This is the simplified version. There is the more expansive version where you've got the 15 circles all the way around, and this was the one that Perry used on the hot seats the other day, of going through, and if you can put even just 3 bullet points next to each of these 6 things, 3 little bullet points about your customer, about something that they love or hate, about their worst enemy and best friend. There are 15 different relationships when you see this drawn out with the 6 circles, and a relationship is a line joining one of these 2 circles. There are 15 different relationships here. The relationship between the thing your customer loves and you. The relationship between your customer and your customer's worst enemy. If you've got 3 bullet points and 15 relationships, you now have 200 plus ads that write themselves. So just as an idea generator, this is a wonderful exercise to go through. But it's tricky. We used to do this with clients. We used to have a Swiss Army call to kick off working with a new client. And it was like pulling teeth. They really just have no idea. Certainly the CEO generally doesn't. Marketing manager, maybe a little bit more of an idea, but really the person you want to talk to about this is the people on the front line.
That is
the
true.
People manning the phones in the customer service center.
Yes.
But of course, CEO's
Yes.
ego gets in the way because they're the hippo. They haven't got a clue of what their customer loves. They talk to you all day about the product and why they started the company, but they've lost sight of what problem does this solve. So yeah, use with caution, particularly when talking to clients. But if you're doing this for your own business, it is well worth asking a few people in the business just to jot down a couple of ideas. Like I say, 2 or 3 bullet points next to each of these 6 things. Say literally, this will take you literally 10 minutes. I'd love to get your feedback, and then chuckle that on the whiteboard, and that will help you write some really creative, not only ads, but also emails, landing pages, everything you need in your marketing. This is not a tool for writing Google ads.
Not exclusively.
Not exclusively, yeah.
Can I make some comments about this? It's as good now as later, I think.
Yeah.
By the way, I totally agree with you about relationships. Knife blade number 1 being really, really, really important. When you're playing around with Swiss Army knife, do it literally by hand with pen or pencil on a blank sheet of paper or a legal pad or what have you. And do not obsess about making sure you come up with ads that fit inside the 35 character limit per line.
Yes.
When you're initially doing that, do not let that be a constraint. Let your creativity just run riot. And worry later on about squeezing all that stuff into, Google Ads with a 25 character headline and 35 character D1 and D2. And one of the realities, and people and lots of AdWords Bootcamp folks have brought this up because they're curious. They're like, when Perry was writing those ads and he was showing all these examples there, if he was speaking to people looking for a divorce attorney, in his Swiss Army knife ads, he was not using the word divorce attorney in the headline. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you are correct. He wasn't. When you are doing your brainstorm, you brainstorming with this. I want you, like I said, to let your imagination run riot. The reality is, if you are writing ads for Google search, I'm going to bet you money that your ads are going to get better click-through rates if you do use the keywords in the headline. And Mike, you can, certainly speak to exceptions to that rule. But with Google search, that is one of the constraints you're probably going to find that you are going to have to abide by. But the nice thing about this is, for Google Display Network, that is not a constraint you really have to pay much attention to, sticking keywords in the headline. And so you're going to be a little more free. But part of this exercise is just get away from the constriction of 25, 35, 35 characters and so on, and just go crazy with this, and then worry later about how to fit some of these Swiss Army knife things into your character limits that you got. So.
That's a very, very good point and very good reminder. Don't self-edit. Chuck it all on the board and edit data. Two others that I'm going to mention here. Blade 11, which is numbers. Rich Stokes shared some data around this. So Rich Stokes, boss of Ad Guru that we mentioned briefly last week, he found that a large number of winning ads, i.e. ads that had been around over a long period of time, contained some sort of number. So that's just a little checklist as to the different types of numbers that you could include. Generally speaking, good rule of thumb, try and have a number. Go on.
And by that he means a numeral, not just a number spelled out in English.
Correct. Yep. Not only is that shorter, to use the numeric, it's also our brain can deal with numbers much faster than it can with words. And when we're scanning that page, it's just you're making it easy for the brain, which therefore means brain likes us more. And I quite like this one, because this really is sort of, for me, one of the big differences with Swiss Army ads, and certainly with a lot of Perry's writing. And he'll tell you that a lot of his success has come from his ability to craft excellent copy as much as AdWords or anything else. It's really the autoresponders and the ability to write well that has been responsible for a large part of the success, and the ability to use these sorts of things and to use rhythm and rhyme and so on in the writing, that just makes these things stand out. Again, you're not going to be able to do it every time. You don't have to try and have one of these or more than one of these in every ad. And you can see down the bottom there some of the different sort of tone voices that I was talking about before. But it is an interesting thing to play with. Once you've got, let's say, a winning ad that's been running for a while and you haven't been able to beat it, well, what actually if we tried to come up with a different version of the ad for each one of these, 15, 20 different things, just as a creative exercise to take your brain to totally different places. It is a very interesting exercise. Again, as Brian said before, you may not end up using any of those ads, or you may find that 19 of the 20 actually don't win if you were to run them all. But just as a creative brainstorming exercise, it's the power of the positive constraint. If you say, I have to rewrite this ad using a famous quote, how the hell would I do that? Oh, there's an idea. And your brain will come up with the answer.
Feeling lucky, punk?
Yeah, it's just
99 problems.
Try and do.
99 problems, but low cholesterol ain't one. There you go.
Good. I've been drinking the creative juice today.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to just call out this. So sorry for the grayed out thing, because these are old ads. I was doing a VIP call with one of our VIP members, Robert, this morning, and I saw these in his account, and I said, do you mind if I take a quick screenshot of that? I would love to show these on the call later today. And him being very kind said yes. I think these are excellent examples of Swiss Army ads. Now, I saw the stats in his account, and I don't think they probably had long enough to run, but these didn't work particularly well. Bit of a weird case study to share. You might think, Mike, awesome, you just told me how useful the Swiss Army app is, and now you're telling me that these ads didn't perform. But you mentioned it before, from a search point of view, often they won't. but it is still a great exercise to go through. And I just think these are fantastic ads, but good on him for trying, good on him for testing them. Again, I think, Robert, if you're listening, and I think you're here, at least in the ad group that I was looking at, I don't think these had long enough to run, but I understand your market and you need to sort of cut tests short sometimes. Again, if you're worried, we talked about this a little bit on Perry's call, but if you've got an incumbent ad that you know is strong and you don't want to come up with my mortgage is cheaper, sucker, see why in one click, and you don't want this to be a 50-50 split test between your old incumbent that nothing has been able to beat for 2 years and this new completely different ad, you don't have to do a straight A/B test. You can create multiple copies of that existing winner of your control. Let's say you make 3 copies, so you've now got 4 of those plus the sucker ad, so now it's an A/A/A/A/B test, and that's the relatively easy way to make sure that only a small slice of your traffic sees the new untried, untested ad. The vast majority of your traffic sees the control, which you know is good. So that's a way to sort of mitigate the risk a little. I just wanted to thank Robert and use some of those examples. I think they're excellent. The goal.
Yeah, I agree. And these are those ads. If they, ads like that, if they don't work on Google search, there's still a lot of other places you can show them where they might.
And fantastic fodder for your autoresponders, and fantastic ideas for landing pages too. Again, not just about the search ad. The goal here is we're trying to grab attention. You've got milliseconds really to make your ad stand out, and an ad with an equals sign in the headline is going to stand out more than an ad that is just the same as all of the other ads. You'll also notice why the bottom ad stands out. I think more than the words, it's actually the shape of the ad, and often having a D1 or a D2 that is very, very short. I think it works better with the D1 like we've got here. Your eye is drawn to that because of that negative white space. You can picture this as being one of the ads down the right-hand side of the page. That ad that kind of almost looks like it's got a blank line in the middle is a bit of a pattern interrupt for the brain, and the eye goes to that. It's a sneaky little trick that you may want to try. You're trying to grab attention. So with the idea in mind of grabbing attention, here are a few of the things that you might want to test. You might want to test this because the most important word in the world to you, other than your name, Brian Todd, is the word you. Using the word you in a headline is going to grab people's attention more than just talking in generalities about the thing.
It had to be you.
Press the mute button. Test the word you. Test the word this and these. The these English mistakes. Very, very famous headline. But if you talk about this way to reduce your mortgage, the curiosity around the word this, it is almost, you're compelling people to click because they want to find out what this one thing is. And you've probably seen all of those, I'm going to call them very crappy ads, the fat loss and, this special secret ingredient. I think, you can make this look scammy. You can take that idea too far, but this and these are very, very powerful words in copy. The word because. I love this case study. So this is from Cialdini's second book, where he gives 50 of these little nuggets of little ideas. I'll try and dig out the name of the book. 50 Ways of Getting to Yes, I think, something along those lines. This is one of the stories. So this is what they tested. They tested somebody cutting in the line at the Xerox machine by saying, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. Can I use the Xerox machine?" And 60% okay, said okay. "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. Can I cut in line because I'm in a rush?" It jumped to 94%, said okay. And if you think that the reason matters, "Excuse me, I've got 5 pages, can I cut in line because I have to make some copies?" Still got almost the same result as the "because I'm in a rush." Well, we're all here to make copies, lady. Like, the reason seems ridiculous. Can I cut in line because I need to make some copies. Yeah, that's why I'm standing here. It's probably what I would have been the 7% that said get to the back. But the word because, very, very powerful word. Blah, 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 because, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, okay then. So try using the word because. Instant or instantly, very powerful words. A lot of our display ads, depending on what we're advertising, obviously, but if I can get free instant access into a display ad as a button, then I'm a happy man, because instant, people love instant. They want instant gratification. So better than quick or fast, instant is just that much more powerful. The power of the letter S. Alex Mandosian taught me this one. Consider the two headlines: make your child smarter or makes your child smarter. One letter difference. The winner most of the time is going to be makes your child smarter, because it implies the thing does the work. If I'm buying something and the promise is make your child smarter, the implication is I have to do the work to make my kid smarter. But makes your child smarter implies that the thing does the work. We're all lazy innately, and that will generally work. Amazing, just how one letter can make a difference.
That is harrowing and so utterly true.
We are lazy, essentially, especially men. This is Ogilvy's list of 20 best words. So this is getting a bit sort of dated now, a bit old, but there are some good ideas in there and some things that you may want to try. Again, you get the slides, you'll have those words. I'm not going to read them all out. Generally, also short words. So AdWords ads are not the place for wordplay and very super duper creative, crazy things for the most part. Short words, easy to read, easy to scan, are generally going to work best. And flocky knocky nihilipilification wouldn't fit in an AdWords ad anyway. Longest word in the English language. There you go. Trivia bit for the day.
Yeah, so skip all those long Greek compound words.
Yeah, people are lazy. Make it easy for them. Right, two golden rules. Steve Krug's book had this years ago. Don't make me think. Make it easy. Make it relevant. Really, follow those rules and you're good. Triggers. I love this. Joe Sugarman, we were due to do a Maui event at Joe Sugarman's house, weren't we? I was due to talk at that one. I think that was 3 years ago, and at last minute it had to be cancelled for a whole bunch of reasons. But I was so looking forward to meeting Joe and hanging out at his Maui mansion. He wrote this book called Triggers. Now, when I first started talking about this book, you could not get it for love or money. So I've created the mind map of the book for you. And again, it's all vector-based, so you can zoom in and actually read it, and that's in the Google Plus community. I've noticed that that is now available on Amazon, or at least it will be for the rest of the day. There are a few copies there through the third-party sellers for as low as $20. That used to be about $150 on Amazon, Triggers. A lot of the triggers are mentioned in a second book that he wrote, if you're really interested, Advertising Secrets of the Written Word, which is much more easily available. Also a wonderful book, but you don't need it because I've summarized the whole thing for you. And there are 30 triggers in this book. I'm going to give you my top 9 and a couple of examples of how you might want to use these in ads. So
this is great 80-20, by the way, Mike. I hope everyone knows how good 80-20 that is, that mind map he just showed you. A whole damn book on one page. So
why read a book when you just need the net of the net of the net?
Exactly.
The 80-20 of the 80-20 of the 80-20. Let's just sum it all up in a paragraph. Oh, hello. There we go. Better. Curiosity. We all know that as humans, we love curiosity and story. Trying to weave that in, I've seen testimonials that start in an ad and then are continued on the page, but it's a story, not a sort of a marketing testimonial. And read more of Jane's story. That kind of thing. We love story. We love human story, particularly. A bit harder to squeeze into an ad, certainly, but if you can, brainstorm it, see if you can get it in there. Exclusivity is another one of Sugarman's triggers. Now, this ad that I stumbled into the other day actually gives right out and tells you it's exclusive. You can probably be a bit more creative than that, but yeah, that's probably worth a shot too. Go on, you're gonna. Were you gonna say something?
Well, I had a comment about story, but I'll save it for when you're done with this.
Okay. Exclusivity. Words like special, limited, exclusive, forbidden, hidden, secret truth, temptation, revealed, or exclusive words. Specificity. Now, this one isn't quite there. Access over 180,000 babysitters. The other one before, when you remember we were looking at the competitor stuff, there was 40,000. I can't remember what it was, 40,000 cleaners or something like that. So this would probably be better if it was, but then it might not be believable. If it was 184,732, that would be more specific, but you've got to sort of balance that with believability and credibility. So I think this is a pretty good trade-off between the two. But generally speaking, with smaller numbers, if you can be specific, rather than say double your business, we guarantee a 93% increase. Generally speaking, when you're more specific, people assume that you are using real data. You may not be, but you should be. But they'll assume that you are, and therefore it becomes more believable, which is also part of credibility. So again, I mentioned before, you cannot always use number one and best, but if you have the proof to back that up, then you can get away with that. And if you've got something like a BRW award, then that is going to be worth testing. Again, also that's going to be part of your landing page, most definitely, but I thought I'd chuck that in because they're Chicago-based, and I was thinking in terms of what does Sugarman say? He talks about credibility this way. If something about your message is not believable, chances are the prospect will sense it. Make sure each statement you make is truthful, not too exaggerated and utterly believable. And as soon as I heard that, I thought of SEO, so I went looking for SEO ads, and I found that one. But yeah, awards, credibility, greed. An interesting trigger to test. I love this, and you could win your purchase back. That is going to appeal to a certain segment of people, and that may be enough to get this ad to double or triple the click-through rate. You don't know until you test. Yeah, bonus, reduced, cheap, discount, save, win, free, all good words to use for greed. Hope, bit harder to find an example for this one, but essentially what Sugarman talks about is where you can't guarantee something, then you're going to sort of start to motivate them, boost your ROI, talk about things that they care about, boost your ROI and relevance. You're not putting a guarantee around that, but you're suggesting that things will be better. Therefore, you're appealing to their hope gland. And two last ones, guilt, always interesting to test, guilt versus greed versus hope, and emotion, which really is what the Swiss Army knife is all about, is getting more emotion into your ad, because we buy emotionally and we justify logically. And one last one, urgency. I'm just going to give you a little way that you can do this now. This is a fairly new thing with Google Ads, where if you put this little bit of code in your ad, because we used to have to use scripts to do this, which would change the ads periodically, but you can now put this little bit of code in your ad and it will automatically count down for you to a particular event. You don't need to change your ad, it just does the work for you. Pretty cool. You grab that code from the slide if you need it. This is probably a good place to pause and talk about some other stuff if you have any questions or you want to talk about the story.
I just posted a link in the chat box about something called 6-Word Memoirs.
Yes, love that site. I almost put a link to it in here, but I couldn't find any that were worthy of a screenshot that weren't going to insult anyone. But yeah, it's wonderful site.
It's a fun way to try out testing if you can tell a story using just 6 words. One of the most famous of all time, by the way, comes from Ernest Hemingway himself, who told an entire story in just 6 words, and here it was. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Oh boy,
every time.
It does. That one gets me every time, too.
I didn't know that was Hemingway. There you go.
Pretty sure it's
Never knew
Hemingway.
that. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, sixwordstories.org, I think, is another one. Same deal. Yeah, good for inspiration. Great to sort of read just to get you in that frame of mind. Love that. Thank you for mentioning that.
By the way, John mentions there were 20 copies of Triggers on Amazon. I just ordered one copy, so there are 19 left.
Good work, John.
Scarcity. There you go. Scarcity. Cialdini would be proud.
All right, let's talk about.
The other question was, what was that long word that you whipped through?
Flocky-nocky-nihilipilification, first used in 1427 and means the act of rendering worthless. Longest word in the English language.
Give us does that start with the letter F or the letter PH?
PH. Flocky-nocky-nihilipilification.
All right, perfect.
Many beers in university to learn to say that. Time well spent.
Excellent.
Right. Two types of ad extension, and we'll talk about this again in week 5, where we talk about quality score in more depth and we talk about ad rank. But ad rank is essentially when everybody is eligible to join an auction. So you've got a keyword that matches that search query, you're in the mix. Then Google runs a quick auction on those 200 advertisers that want in to show an ad to this person. Bear in mind this happens in milliseconds. And it goes around the room, right, how much you bid, quality score, how much are you prepared to bid, and the use of ad extensions. All of these 3 things now go into the mix to determine your ad rank, and then that determines who shows in position 1, 2, 3, 4, and on down the page. So ad extensions, by making this part of the formula for ad rank, Google are giving us a very, very clear sign that this is something that's very important to them. It is something that they believe, therefore, increases the user experience of using Google. But obviously, too, the cynical part of us says it makes them a boatload more money because it's causing more people to click on ads. Ads take up more space on the SERPs. Google makes more money. Everybody's happy, except those SEO guys. Bless them. 2 types, manual and automatic. So manual are ones that you can control. You can do something about this. The automatic ones I'll list in a second, you don't have as much control over. Now, I'm not going to talk about every single one here. My job is the 80-20. So of these 6, I'm going to talk about calls, site links, and call-outs. Location, yep, great. But to do that, you're going to need a Google My Business page. So it was, what was it first? Google Places, then it was Google Plus Local, now it's called Google My Business. You're going to need to set that up first and then link your Google My Business page to your AdWords account. That's how you get your location extension in your account. I'm not going to talk about that today because that's a Google My Business thing and we could spend an hour talking about Google My Business, and it's also one of the most broken parts of the Google system, trying to get your thing validated, trying to fix listings, trying to move offices and get Google to understand that you've moved offices is a painful process. So go hire a Google My Business specialist if that is something that's bugging you. Automatic. These cover things like consumer ratings. Previous visits, you may have seen that under an ad, you last visited this site on blah date. Seller ratings, or even social, direct site links and social. So I'll show you an example that has a whole bunch of these in. And just first of all, before I dig into the specifics of which extensions are being used in that ad, just notice how much room that ad takes up on the page. It's a 7-line ad, and only 3 of those lines are the actual ad itself because, again, like I talked about before, D1, your accounts and payroll in one, D1 has been wrapped onto the end of the headline. So you can see it's headline dash D1. Underneath that, in green, we've got the display URL, and they're using every single last character of the 35 characters there. And then D2, which was actually buy online now for 50% off. By having punctuation on the end of D1, that's what's caused that extra long headline to appear. But then they also have a good display URL, like we talked about, putting something on the end of the domain name, / and notice how they've used capitals for the accounting software. So I'm sure they'd love to use a capital. Well, maybe Xero wouldn't actually, because I think that's their brand is all lowercase. Most people would like to have their name capitalized, the X in Xero, Google's going to show all of that bit before the first / in lowercase. Nothing you can do about that. But after that / you can use capitals. So capital A for accounting and capital S for software. Callouts that we're going to get to in a sec. That's the simple to use with the dots in between. It's not a period, it's a dot in the middle of the line. That's a callout extension. That's been around for about, let's say, 3, maybe 4 months at this point. Very, very useful, and very few advertisers making use of those still, even though they've been out 3 or 4 months. So there's a huge opportunity for you. This is one of the first things you're going to do when you jump off this call. If you're not yet using callouts in your ads, go add those. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in a second. We've got a review ad there. Now, they are harder to get to stick. We've tried doing this for some of our larger clients, and the approval process is, well, I'm going to use the word random. So that World's Most Innovative Growth Company 2014 Forbes line, you have to basically link to that quote on the landing page. That has to be not just you typing that on your landing page, but you actually have to link to and show Google where this review has come from, and it has to be from a third-party reputable source. So it can't be your mum saying this and then you say, oh, here's a review from my mum, put that in my ad. It has to be something big like Forbes or New York Times or something of that nature. So it is kind of random at this point. But if you have something like that, if you have a great quote from a well-known reputable third-party source, it is worth a crack. Social, I mentioned before, so if you've got and again, this is a little random. You need, I think that the general consensus of opinion is you need at least 100 followers, but that's not the only signal. So Google look at, I believe, how you use your Google Plus page. It's not just about the number of followers that you have. It's, are you active on Google Plus, which of course most people aren't. Then you might get that extra line. And because most people have got way, way, way less followers on Google Plus than they have, say, Facebook likes, because they've tipped all of their social equity into Facebook, then that's often quite a small number and probably embarrassingly small, and you may not want that to show in your ad. So unless you're using Google Plus really, really well, don't worry too much about that one. And then the bottom link there, which, so site links look quite similar to callouts, but you'll notice that callouts are not links. They're not in blue. Site links, I can click into extra parts, different parts of the website.
Can you set callout extensions at the ad group level or just the campaign level? Kevin,
you can do both. Yeah, I'll talk about those in just a sec, but you can do both. And just a couple of other extensions here. This is the ratings one. So again, the vast majority of us will not use this. This is an automatic thing. You can look into Google surveys if you want to learn more about those. And then, yeah, location and call extensions shown there.
So now, like compared to 10 years ago, ads are taking up more than twice the amount of space on a page. Well, a few select ads are.
On a laptop, yeah, that's right. The best advertisers on a laptop screen, and certainly on an iPad screen. You're lucky if you see more than one organic result now. The rest are ads. I mean, if we go back to that, picture that on a laptop or an iPad, you're maybe going to see that at 0, which has got, they've even got the star ratings in their organic listing, and that review by ZDNet there. And then the next one is theirs anyway. That third, freeaccountingsoftware.com.au, that's not going to be above the fold on many, many screens. It's almost all paid. That's why they make $16 billion a quarter. So, callouts. That was the callout line, just to remind you. So it's the ones that are not links, separated with the little dots, and that's how you see if your competitors are using callouts. Can you see that line in their ad? It's obviously only going to be shown if you're in the top 3 premium spots above the organic results. You won't see callouts if you're showing positions 4 through 11. To get to this in your site, in your AdWords account, go to the Ad Extensions tab. First of all, that's where all of these things are. And then that drop-down box just underneath that, that's where you choose the manual extensions, the ones that you get to control. The automatic ones, Google decides when it's going to show those. So callouts down towards the bottom of that list. When you first go in there, this is what it's going to look like. You don't have any callouts. So to answer that question before, you can see across the bottom here, you can have these at an account level, at a campaign level, or an ad group level. So yes, you can have different callouts for different ad groups. I would suggest though, until you're an absolute bloody ninja at AdWords, don't go near that, because again, that gets really difficult to manage and control and change over time. I would generally have campaign level extensions. Now, many of your campaigns may use the same callouts over and over again, and that's fine, but have callouts at a campaign level, not at a group level, for the most part. Much, much easier to manage. And so when you see that script, you click on the big new plus extension button, you add a new callout. You can see the new callout towards the bottom left of your screen. So a light box is going to come up. You can click on that new callout, and then you're going to fill out the text over there on the right-hand side, callout text. I believe I've got this right. I think it's 25 characters. I'm not entirely sure on that. Hover over that question mark and it'll tell you. I think it's 25 characters. Now you can schedule these if you want, but again, probably more hassle than it's worth. Stick with 24/7, at least for now. Worry about scheduling those later on. And just like ads, you can choose to show these callouts. So you can say these callouts on a mobile, and if you don't tick mobile, then it shows on all devices. Again, 99% of the time, I wouldn't worry about that. So given that we're all about 80/20 here, not going to talk about that yet. Just know that it's an option. If you want to show different callouts on mobile, you can do it, but you don't really need to worry about that yet. So add some callouts. What you want to do is add at least 4, preferably at least 6 for each campaign. So it's pretty quick and easy to do. The benefit of having lots is that Google is going to pick and choose, it's going to try and pick and choose at least the callouts that are least similar to the ad copy. So if you've got free shipping mentioned in your ad, and one of your callouts is free shipping, then it's generally going to try and ignore that one and grab another 3 or 4. If you write short callouts, you will sometimes be able to get it to display 4 callouts along that line. Generally, it's going to show 3. If you use the full 25 characters, it's only going to show 3. So short ones, you get a little bit more. Remember, they're not links, so therefore there is no URL that goes with this callout. It's just a great way to cover some of the sort of basic main benefits, even some of the points of benefit difference, those ones that aren't maybe quite as strong. It's just a great way to put them in here, put them in a callout, it then frees up space in the ad to give you more room to say what you really want to say in the ad. So if you have been in business since 1800 and blah, 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 then chuck that in a callout, and then you don't have to waste space in the ad for that, something that isn't a really strong point of difference, but hey, maybe it sort of just adds some credibility and helps tip a couple of people over the line. Callout is a great place to put that sort of thing. Site links. So again, this will display differently and at different times. You'll often get 3 or 4 in a row underneath the ad. And I've got a better example here for you. Sometimes you will see these expanded site links, which are almost, well, they are really, aren't they? 4 extra ads within the ad. So that's all part of the ad for one of our clients. I've just blanked out the top part of the ad there. But if you take the trouble of writing the extra description to go with your site link, which I'll show you in just a second, which is optional, then you can have, sometimes Google will choose to show the expanded version of your site link. Now, generally, that's only going to happen on high volume keywords that have already got a high quality score. So if you've got a brand campaign running, definitely take the trouble to put expanded site links in there. But for most of your non-brand search campaigns, don't worry about this yet. Get the site links added, but don't worry about taking the extra time to write all of the descriptions for them, because most of the time they won't get displayed in this manner. Most of the time it'll be like the top half of the screen there. So you do it in exactly the same way. I'm not going to show you all of those steps again because it's dead easy. Add extensions tab, choose it from the drop down, click on the new, and in you go. Link text and a link URL. So where do I want to send this person if they click? And then if you want, you can have a D1 and D2 for the site link itself, but again, that won't get shown most of the time. Now, you can send people off your main site with these. So, your site link might be read our reviews at LinkedIn, and you can direct people off your LinkedIn page if you want to. Use it with caution, because obviously you don't have conversion tracking on those sites, and you don't really want to send that traffic off to somewhere that you don't control, but it can be an interesting thing to test. And then the last one I'm going to cover is the call extension. So,
I ask a question about the site link extensions. Alan asks with the statistics and the reporting, is the CTR, the click-through rate of the extensions, or the site link extensions, is of the 100% of the clicks that the ad gets? You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking. So it'll show 100 clicks from 1,000 impressions. Therefore, your click-through rate is 10%. That is for that ad as a whole. When the site link was displayed, it's not showing you the number of people that clicked on the site link. I'll show you exactly how to find that number in Module 8 when we get more into reporting. I didn't want to sort of muddy the waters here with it. But yeah, a lot of people tend to think that site links are much, much more effective than they actually are. It turns out very few people actually click on them, but they tend to click the ad more when they're displayed, if that makes sense. So yeah, the numbers you'll see in the report can be a bit misleading, but I'll cover that in Module 8.
All right.
And then call extensions. So an example from a desktop or tablet on the left-hand side, example from a mobile on the right-hand side. Getting that number in the ad, this is the only way you can do it now. Again, you can't put the phone number in the ad copy. And I've got this. Yeah, I'm going to show you an example in just a second of a second part of this. But what did I want to cover here? Google forwarding number. So you put your phone number in that box top right. If you choose the show my ad with a Google forwarding number, if I flick back to this one, these guys are a fantastic client, love them to death, absolute domestics. That is not the phone number that you'll find on the website. That's the Google tracking number that then gets forwarded to their phone number. The reason we want that is so that we get all of the data by bouncing that through Google's system. Because now I can tell how many people actually call that phone number. See, on a mobile ad, I can tell how many people clicked on that call button over on the right-hand side there in red. I've added the red in case you're wondering. That is not normally there. I've drawn the red box around it. I can tell because I get charged for every click on that call button. What I don't know is how many of those calls actually come through to me and are successful. If I bounce it through the Google system, I can actually set a duration for that phone call. So you might say something like 30 seconds. If the call lasts longer than 30 seconds, then count it as a conversion. And that is particularly useful, obviously, for desktops, because I have no idea, jumping back here, I have no idea if someone were to call that number directly on their desktop, not even click through to the site. If that was my normal number, I would have no idea that AdWords caused that phone call. By using the Google tracking number, I now have data. And you might find that you've got a keyword in your account that is showing as 0 conversions. It's had all these clicks, but 0 conversions. And when you add call tracking, you suddenly find, oh, well, okay, nobody's filling out the form on my website. My other main conversion, no one's filling out the form for this particular keyword, but I've got loads of people that are actually calling me once they come through, and it is actually a good keyword. I was about to kill it because it looked like it was just costing me lots of money. But once you add this and you add some extra data, you realize what the good keywords really are. So you're getting the full picture for the first time. I would generally, if it exists in your country, I would highly recommend using the Google forwarding number.
And John asks, how do they charge for the click on the phone call tab? Is it the same as the keyword bid?
Yes. Yep. It is. And if this is a mobile one, if you click on that call button, you get charged immediately. Certainly on an iPhone, my experience of this, what pops up then is a little dialogue that says call or cancel. Do you want to call this number? I think it says confirm, cancel. If that person clicks cancel at that point, tough. You have already paid. If they click call, obviously the call then comes through to your number. So you're paying, literally, you're paying for clicks on that call extension button. It may or may not turn into a phone call. And this is why we sometimes use this style of ad. So if I flick back here, right-hand side of your screen, notice it's a normal looking ad, normal headline in blue. If you click the headline, you go through to the website. If you click the call button, you're on the phone. I can choose to set up an ad like this where the headline no longer exists. The phone number is the headline. And a click on this ad, anywhere on this ad, brings up that, do you want to call or cancel? So if you set your ads up this way, you get many, many more phone calls. Now, some of them are going to be idiot calls, but you get a lot more phone calls than if you were to send that traffic through to the site. So particularly useful if your site looks crappy on a mobile device, which obviously it shouldn't still in 2015. But if you've got a client especially, and they don't have a good mobile site, then this is a good quick workaround. Or if you're taking over an account that, let's say, somebody who are quite big, starts with an R, rhymes with each local, something that they might have been running in the past, they will have been cheating with their conversions, and so this is a good way to maybe kick off that campaign so that your numbers are at least as good as theirs, probably better. But if you do the standard style of ad, then all of a sudden the client's going, well, hang on a minute, I was getting way more phone calls before with the other mob, and you said you were going to be way better. So this can be a way to sort of start that off and then say, look, we'd like to test the other style of ad now. We'd like to test not doing this and forcing people to call you. We'd actually like to give them a choice. But now that we've got a baseline, now that you can see we've improved everything by 300%, now we're ready to test this and see what's better for you. But you may want to start with this. And the way you do that is this option in the call extension. So you choose to show just the phone number instead of the one that's highlighted there, both my website and the phone number. If you change that to the bottom one, just the phone number, then your ad looks like that. We used this for an air conditioning mob down in Adelaide. We were driving, I think the stats were around about an additional 300 phone calls a month into that business for a cost of, I think it was $3.18 a call. This is a business that spends tens of thousands on TV and radio, and all of a sudden they're getting an additional 10 calls a day for $30. That made a big, big difference to that business. They now have 3 stores, not 1.
That's
just
awesome.
because of us. But yeah, we had something to do with it.
You had something major to do with that. And it is, you're not in that case paying for both a click and a phone call, or is it counted as one click, or are there situations?
You just pay once.
Okay, you just pay. Good enough. Good to know.
And it is generally, I mean, unless you're in the data center market, it is generally a fairly low price. Any business would be happy to pay, even if that's $15 a click. Any business would be happy to pay that sort of money for an inbound call from someone hot to trot, rather than. For most businesses that we talk to, it's at least twice as valuable than the person that's come through the website, filled in the form, and given their phone number, and maybe your conversion rate on that is 5%. But you still then have to go chase them and catch them when they're actually going to answer the phone and they're screening you and they're not answering the call, looking at caller ID. If they're calling in, you've got them when they're ready, not when you're ready, and generally that is, for most businesses, a much, much better quality lead. So it can be a very good thing to test. So action steps, only got 2 of them, dead easy for you. Go build your matrix. However you want to do that, go have a look at some competitor ads, and even if you've been running AdWords for a long time, go have a look at some competitor ads, see what they're saying, and see if you can pull some ideas out there to add to your testing ideas, things to test in the future. For bonus points, if you want to use Howie's matrix, I'll share the blank Word doc, so it's editable rather than a PDF. I'll put the Word doc into, I think it's already there. I think it's in the Google Plus community. It's just not one of the links at the top, but I'll add it as a link at the top and make it easier to find. And go write some ads. Funnily enough, that's your homework. If you're already running AdWords, then you already know how to use the interface and how to do that in the interface. For now, if this is your very first campaign and you're just going through, don't go near AdWords yet. Don't even open it up. So we talked last week about doing your keyword research and either sticking those on a piece of paper and having two columns, good and bad, the stuff we're going to keep and the stuff we're going to turn into negative keywords later on, or maybe you prefer to use an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Doc or something like that. Same deal with your ads. Just either write them on paper or put them in a spreadsheet. 2 ads per theme. We talked about themes last week. What are the major sections of your website? What are the major themes of things that you're going to go do keyword research about? At least 2 ads per theme. Because from now on, every single ad group that we create, and again, next week we're going to bolt all of this together and actually go build the campaigns inside the interface and really get stuck into the interface, excuse me, in detail for the first time. We're always going to have at least 2 ads running in every single ad group from now on. If you are already running AdWords, that could be part of your homework. Go have a look and see how many ad groups you have that only have 1 ad in there. If you only have 1 ad and you're already familiar with the interface, by all means, knock yourself out, log in, and add a new ad to each of those ad groups. Always be running at least 2 ads per group. And next week, we will talk all about campaigns and how to stitch all of these things together. And that is me.
Those setups make a big, big difference. So some questions about the phone calls, and then a couple other questions about extensions, and so on.
Sure.
By the way, our attendees are having fun with the 6-word memoirs. Bigger bonus, more golf, smiley face. That's from Jeffrey. And let's see. John was asking, should the ads be 1 regular and 1 mobile?
Okay. Best practice, 2 regular and 2 mobile. Is the best. Now, it's a little bit harder to manage, but that way you are split testing a pair of ads for desktop and tablet, and you're split testing a pair for mobile. I will cover that in more detail next week if that sentence made no sense to you.
Yeah, that makes
John
sense.
understands what I mean.
He appeared to, yes. So Matthew is asking, can I use a non-Google number that I have tracking on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you have your own tracking or if you're using a different third party for tracking, absolutely. You don't have to use Google tracking, but Google's is the free and easy one.
Good. Let's see. Scott asks, would you recommend the Google 800 number for local business? Because I like the idea, but people like a local number.
Look, I would agree. I think a lot of times a local number implies that you're going to get a real person on the phone, and a toll-free number implies that you're about to get lost in telephone tree hell. If you can have a local trackable number, and the key thing for me is where the data goes, because it's one thing to get data in a report from my phone number provider saying, hey, you got 47 calls this month and they were from these numbers and they lasted this long. That's lovely, but I really want the data in the AdWords account, because otherwise I can't use it as part of my optimization of my campaigns. That's why I like the Google system, is you don't have to go and pay a dev to bolt all these things together and go test it for 2 weeks. It just works, and you have all of that data at the search query level, and that's quite important. It's not knowing that AdWords caused an extra 47 calls this month, because again, that's useful for you to tell the client how good AdWords has been, but I want to know specifically which search terms, not even which keywords, but which search terms led to those phone calls, because I need that level of data to really to best optimize my account.
Right. Let's see. Joshua was asking, is there a way you can see clicks that were made on a mobile but canceled before the call was made or completed?
No, you just get to see the difference. So you know how many clicks you've paid for, and then you know how many calls came in if you're using Google tracking. So you may find that it's 50-50, and that you're actually paying for 50% where people clicked and then cancelled, but at least now you have that data. I always assume it's 50-50, but I'm talking to clients, I say, look, let's assume that instead of paying $2.40 a click, you're actually paying $4.80 a call. That's still a decent number.
Got it. So let's see, trying to get a good read on these questions before I actually ask them. Let's see. Liam was asking, do you use scripts for ad testing, or can you recommend any?
I generally don't at this point. So yeah, this is a tricky one because we actually went and built our own tool to identify winners and losers, so the team gets alerted, and then we know when to go in and write new ads. But I have seen some good scripts around that. I'm going to talk more about scripts in week 8, but if you remind me, sir, in the Google Plus community, chuck a note in there, because I did find one yesterday. We've been talking a bit more about different scripts, and I did bump into a script specifically for that yesterday. If you find the thread that Joe Bowers started about testing domains, I've also shared a blog post in there which is entitled something along the lines of scripts to help you A/B split test just about anything. So that can be ads, domains, all sorts. So there's a blog post already in the Google Plus community, somewhere towards the top where Joe asked about the domain testing. But yeah, I will give you a script for that, either in the Google Plus area, if we get to it beforehand, or worst case in week 8. We'll make a note of that too.
Got it. Let's see. Scott says, I have a shelving business and I feel that people are only going to use desktop to find me. In that case, what is your opinion on mobile ads for my local business?
In that case, just have 2 ads with your ad group and leave that mobile preference box unticked. So if people are searching from mobile, they'll see the same ad, so you don't have to go the extra mile and write 2 additional ads that will only ever be shown on mobiles. If you think the mobile traffic is fairly low, just write 2 ads, leave them both on all devices, i.e. keep that checkbox unticked, and that's good enough is good enough, as we say around here with the 80-20 rule. That's just fine, and then you'll have the data. And if you don't turn mobiles off, you'll have the data then, and you'll be able to find out how many people actually do use their mobile to find you. If that number surprises you, then you can go the extra mile and write some mobile specific ads. If you could think of something different that you want to say in a mobile ad, generally adding call now to the end of D2 is about as different as you get.
Got it. And some questions are coming in about rotating ads and making sure they split equally.
I will talk about next week when we talk about campaign settings, because that's okay. Where I've put that in the sequencing of all of this. But yeah, you have a couple of different options there. In a perfect world, ideally, as marketers, we want to evenly split test our ads. So we don't want Google to be in charge of that. We want to do a 50-50 test and know with some statistical certainty fairly quickly which is the better ad. So I would always choose rotate evenly infinitely, rather than that option of rotate evenly and then after 90 days put Google back in charge, because really you should never be in a situation where you have 90 days worth of data and not be acting on it. But if, like most small business owners, you've got 1,000,001 other things to do and you're not yet at the point of being able to afford an agency to run this for you, then that is an okay setting to use. If you think you're only going to get to this every couple of months and you're only going to have a few hours to look at this when you do so, but I generally stay away from certainly stay away from optimize for clicks. You don't want Google running things to try and spend the most money for you. They're optimized for conversions, can work well, but we'll talk about that next week, because that's definitely a longer discussion about letting Google be in charge.
Got it. And Thomas earlier made the observation, you'll want to have your ad set to rotate evenly if you're going to do that little risk reducing method of writing, four copies of the control and 1 copy of the new one.
Good point.
So, yeah, Thomas has had that sitting there for a little while. Daniel was curious about the reviews um, and where those are sourced from. Are you talking about Google Plus reviews? Is that where those are coming from, or
Sorry, so
where are
there's
those?
two types. Yeah, there's two types. Consumer ratings is the Google Plus stuff. To show that little star rating in your ad, you need to have at least 30 reviews in the last 12 months, and they need to be, I think the thing is these days, at least a 3.5 out of 5 average. However, that isn't enough. And Google don't tell you what the other parts of the rules are. So that's the bit they say you must have at least this, but I think they also look at how people use your Google Plus page, how you use your Google Plus page. So it's a bit of a lottery, it's a bit of a crapshoot as to getting those Google Plus reviews, the little star rating in your ad. The one I was referring to, that the line with the Forbes on it for 0, that is a third-party review, which is part of the manual extensions, where you actually have to load that in and send it off to Google and say, this is the third-party review, this is where the review got mentioned, I've got it over here on my landing page. I think you may even have to give them the URL of that Forbes article or something along those lines. It's been a while since I went in there personally and set it up. But you basically point Google at that and say, these trusted third-party resource said this nice thing about us, and we'd like to use it in our ad. Like I say, approval process, pretty much random, but if you've got a good enough review, then worth a crack.
Very good. Couple more questions, and I think we're done. Ken says 45% of my traffic is mobile. He says, but why should I write a different ad for mobile versus desktop?
Certainly don't have to. Only if you can think of something different that you would want to say to those people, given the context of that search.
Got it.
Yeah.
Good. Eric asks, with ad extensions, do callouts start showing once they're approved? Because during our webinar, I added some. They were quickly approved, but they're not showing just yet. So what should our expectations be there?
Don't expect them to show every time. It's like site links. Google are in charge of when they choose to show that, and they're going to choose to show that when they believe that the addition of that extension is going to have an impact on your click-through rate. So it may well take a little time, and they probably will test it fairly slowly. I've never tried to quantify that because I figure, what's the point? I can't control it, and I don't worry about collecting data if I can't take action on it as a rule. That's a good general rule of thumb, by the way. So I haven't tried to quantify how slowly they roll that out, and do they test it, 1 in 20 searches and show them, and then look at the impact, and then test it a little bit more. And that's what I suspect they do, given how data-driven and algorithmic they are. But I have no insight into their internal processes around that. So short answer, just keep an eye on the data. Come back in a week and look at the data and see what difference it made. Generally, you're not going to spend a huge amount of time managing callouts. You're not going to sit there and trawl through the numbers and go, oh, there's a really crap one, I'll replace that and put this one in there. It's going to be something that you add once, and you glance at that data once every month, maybe even once a quarter, and glance at that data and just, okay, as a rule, they're helping. Really, at this point in time, because so few competitors are using them, it's just about standing out and being different and taking up that extra space, getting that extra line in your ad, making your ad take up additional space where they're not.
Right. Daniel makes the observation, if you have a mobile ad, you'd want to have a phone extension in it, or the ability to call from it. And that's his input on the question about mobile versus desktop ads. So thank you, Daniel. And John says, for one campaign, adding site extensions almost doubled its CTR.
Wow, that's great.
So, a little testimonial.
Great. I think Google's own data showed it. I think the average was somewhere around about a 10 to 15% lift, but still not something to sneeze at if you can get a bonus 10% lift, which obviously then impacts your quality score, impacts your ad rank, reduces your CPC. I'm guessing that gentleman found his CPC dropped quite nicely after that.
I'll bet. So these are good. Yeah, people are seeing seeing their addresses show up in their ad. Um, Eric, more questions are coming in. Eric asks, is there a way to control when the address shows up? I like it
No,
locally, but not when the ad shows up far away.
Google's in charge. Sorry. And Google generally won't show you address when they are far away. Google uses that for local more than most, but yeah, you have no control, so don't worry about it.
Got it. And John is asking, what's an average click-through rate that we should be shooting for? Is there ever a simple, easy answer to that question, Mike?
Go find a piece of string. Okay, for non-brand search, because brand is different. Brand you can expect at 20 to 50%, I reckon. Now, the position is entirely dependent on position. So to answer this question, you have to understand where the segment drop-down is in the interface, and you have to go and segment by top versus other. I know I've explained this on a webinar recently, but I don't think it was in the lead to this series. I think it was one of the 3 I did at the end of last year. I will talk about this definitely, because I love it, in week 8. But you need to look at a top versus other segment, and you can do that at the campaign level, the ad group level, or even the keyword level. So go find that little drop-down box in the middle of your screen that says segment. Segment by top versus other, which is generally down towards the bottom of the list. And when your ads show in the top positions, i.e. 3 premium positions above the organic results, then for most non-brand keywords, you should probably expect a click-through rate of, let me give you a big range, I'll say 5 to 15% as a rough thing to aim for there. So ballpark, let's say round numbers, 10%. For other, which pretty much means down the right-hand side, but they changed it from top versus side to top versus other because you'll see ads at the bottom of the screen sometimes, particularly on tablets and on mobile, and so they just to lump all that up and to be precise, they changed the name to top versus other. When your ad is other, which again, generally speaking, the right-hand side of the desktop, probably expect a click-through rate of around about 0.5 to 1. So generally, there is about a 10 or 20 times higher click-through rate when your ads show in the top. Averages I've seen across a wide range of accounts, 15 times higher is a pretty good estimate. So if you're 0.5 on the right, expect it to be around about 5% at the top. If you're 1% on the right, expect it to be around 10% to 15% at the top. The average that you see in your account, the average we were looking at this morning, looked terrible on the VIP call, but when we pulled it apart, we realized that almost all of the time the ads are showing over on the right-hand side. So your average looks low. What is most important, and just to finish off this bit, but we will talk about this in week 5 as well, but just to give a complete answer to the question, what is far more important than your click-through rate, there is something more important than your click-through rate, is how your click-through rate compares to your competitor's click-through rate for an ad in the same position on the page. So Google is smart enough to know if you generally show in position 6 and have a 1% click-through rate, it is not going to compare you to a competitor who's always showing in position 1 and has a 20% click-through rate, because that would be a bit ludicrous. It's smart enough to understand to look at your click-through rate when you show in position 6 versus the competitor when they show in position 6. And the difference in click-through rate is what's important for that same position. But in general terms, 0.5 to 1 on the right, 5 to 15 at the top.
All right. And if you have any further questions, Google Plus community is the place for you. Mike, this is a fun topic and lots of rabbit holes to go down. And
Yes.
So I appreciate it. I know it's exciting, and I think our AdWords Bootcamp folks will have lots of fun with this. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mike. And we'll see you next go-round.
All right, see you next week.